To further discuss the trajectory of Nigeria at 65, we are joined on the news at 7 by Bolaji Olabode, a public affairs analyst. Thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
All right, so it's 65 years after independence. How would you assess, the trajectory of democracy, the Nigeria's democratic journey, from that time to now compared with other African countries?
All right. Once again, it's a pleasure to be here. If you take a look at the independence of Nigeria, when we compare it particularly to the journey of other African countries, maybe like Ghana, like Mauritius, who are long-standing independent nation, you are going to see that for over the years, Nigeria has stand at a wide gap in between them. Of course, they share the same kind of issues because there's a governance fatigue that is bedeviling all African countries right now. Yeah. But among them all, Nigeria has a strong electoral body in which repeatedly we have been able to have our electoral cycle consistently. Therefore, in that situation, we are a bit different when it comes to other African countries. But what we must look at is that in our civic space, there is still an issue around this in which our people are clamoring and saying that there should be freedom for the media, there should be freedom for protests. These are issues in which we must look into when we are talking, because now we see the issue of legitimacy. Of course, there is still an absence of public trust in our institutions. So therefore, we have to work more on this, but it's not all doom and gloom when we look at our journey so far since over 6 decades and 5 years ago.
All right, so with our political history so far, what lessons do you think we can draw from our political history to better or to further, our democratic institutions?
One of the lessons in which we can draw from this is to strengthen checks and balances among governance structure, especially when it comes to issue of executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. There must be independent judiciary. Until we are able to achieve this, definitely it means we have not really drawn any lesson so far over the years in our democratic journey. There must be a legislative in which that is not delegated. Okay. It is not a rubber stamp legislative in which whatever the executive brings to the table is being stamped by them. These are the lessons in which we must draw over the years in this. And there must be a protection of civic space. We must be able to protect our civic space. People must be willing to say their mind. People must be able to protest if there is a need for it. People must be willing to able to speak their mind as time dictates. Therefore, we must learn that the true democracy is the one in which people have the rights and their rights are not being infringed on.
All right. We've been practicing federalism for a while now. Do you think that we have come to birth, or a restructuring is inevitable?
All right. Taking a look at our federalism, of course, this federalism has achieved a geographical unity when we take a look at it. Of course, there is unity within the country, there is unity within the nation, but we must take a look at the issue of the resources that is being controlled at the center. And therefore, it has continued to call for more of restructuring. Right. Take a look at the issue of state police. People have been saying there must be a way in which states must have control over its own police. We are talking about the issue of local government autonomy also. These are calls in which people have been saying, okay, let us look into this critically. Without doing all this, people will continue to clamor for restructuring. And it is not only enough for us to have geographical unity alone. People must have a sense of belonging. People must have a sense in which they share in the success of the nation, not that it's being controlled from one hand and in which others people are not being able to benefit from it. So therefore, we must look critically into the aspect of strengthening our institutions so that we are able to achieve the federalism and this restructuring that we are clamoring for.
All right, now that brings us to leadership issues. Some would say Nigeria, and as well as other African countries, are bedeviled by leadership, issues. So now, our leadership in the past 6.5 decades, how would you rate it? What are our failings? What are our gains over the years?
All right. When we take a look at our leadership in the country, leadership must be judged by the outcome that it has on the ordinary citizen. Therefore, if we take a look at that angle, we are going to say that our leaders have a lot to do when it comes to the issue of the way in which they govern our people. Okay. So because anytime we talk about the statistics, the economy is growing, this is happening, the inflation is going down, but what is the impact on the ordinary citizen? Therefore, these are the questions in which we must ask. Have we been able to put food on the table of a citizen? In a country of about 234 million, as quoted by the Vice President at the United Nations Assembly about that last week, and about half of this population, and when we talk about half of the population, that's about 100 and, if I'm right, 116 million people are still living below the poverty line. It means there's a need for us to still do more. Look at the inflation rate, a bit above 20%. Therefore, there is a lot for us to do when it comes to leadership. Our leaders must be able to take the bull by its horn and make sure that whatever they do at the end of affairs must go down to the ordinary citizen. Without this, nothing has been achieved over the years. You can continue to score statistics, but if the people are hungry, if the people are hungry over little things, definitely the leadership has not achieved much. But over the years, taking a look at where we are coming from and where we are now, I am entirely optimistic that we are going to get better.
Looking at the young minds, the population, the youth strength that we have in Nigeria, do you think that Nigeria has really harnessed, the youth strength? Have they leveraged on the youth population of Nigeria? And how do they do that going forward?
All right, we can do better, but honestly, I can tell you, with the 70% population, percent of our population being the youths, we can start to judge whether it is the UN statistics saying 18 to 34, or other charter which says 18 to 35 or 18 to 25, whichever one we want to choose. Nigerian population of youth is about 70% of total population. Therefore, if we harness this very well, it's going to speak well for us. Over the years, we can see that the trajectory of the Nigerian image in the national, in the subnational, and at the international level has changed, because most of our youth who are before now called lazy, who are before now called yahoo, the image is changing, which means right now our youth are finding means, especially with the advent of technology, they are doing better in that situation. Therefore, the government must look into this in terms of culture, technology, ICT, and sports. We must be able to harness this together for the image of the country to be much more better. But the youth are doing fine, but the country can do better, especially the leadership, because I can tell you categorically that most of the development we have achieved, most of what the youths are doing, are a product of self-made youths, in which they are the one in which they are putting in all their strengths to be able to achieve much for themselves. The government must tap into these resources, the human resources that we have in our youth, so that we can be able to achieve a nation that is built on the trust of the people.
All right. Looking at the climate of the nation, bedeviled by security issues, ethnic and religious divisions here and there, and all of that, people would say that at 65, Nigeria ought not to be here anymore.
Yes.
How do we move forward? Do you see unity at the end of the day on the religious and ethnic lines? And do we have, a safer country? This is 65.
All right. One of these things, the thing in which we must look into is that you cannot take away division from the people by ignoring them. Therefore, we must understand that we are a nation of different ethnicity. We are a nation of different religion. We are a nation in which we are even from different regions. But that understanding does not take away that in that our diversity, there must be unity. But it's a pity that most of our political elites, are the ones during election, they come around, they divide us along those regions because of election, because of votes. And therefore, I can say that a nation building is hard. We are colonial borders are fuse people together. Therefore, it is us that we must think beyond the level in which we are now, so that we might be able to move beyond the level we have. Also, wherever there is a scarce commodity, people are contesting around a very scarce commodity. It is very difficult to build a national unity around the people in that sense. So therefore, for us to be able to have this image of national unity outside, the leadership must be able to provide more. Maybe invest in agro business, invest in technology, like I've said earlier, invest in ICT, so that the people will have a sense of sharing in the nation's success. Without that, when a region feels that they are out of the game, when a religion feels they are not part of the success of the nation, there is continuing going to be what I call it a protest. We can call it a protest. We can call it cries and whatever outside there. We are not going to achieve that unity. There must be a sense that we all belong to the same country and we all share out of his own successes.
Well, Mr. Olabode, as you're still very much youthful yourself.
Thank you very much.
What is the elaborate vision of Nigeria, in the coming years? that you've painted in your own mind as a youth, how would you want Nigeria to thrive? You used to want all of this Jackpot syndrome. Is that what you see? Is that what you foresee for your children and for, up and coming youths, behind you? How do you see Nigeria? What do you wish for, for Nigeria in the coming year?
Okay, Nigeria at 65 for me is a nation with an immense promise. And therefore, what I can say about it is that it depends on how the leadership are able to harness this potential into prosperity.
Okay.
This nation depends on how even the citizens themselves are able to speak about justice, talk about accountability. It is only when the leadership and the followership, they do their part, that is when we can achieve the nation of our dream. We must not, as followership, concentrate whatever we have to do to the leadership alone. It must be accountable leadership and responsible followership. Without that, we are not going to move forward as a nation.
All right, Mr. Olabode Bolaji, thank you for joining us, a public affairs analyst and educational consultant. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.